astro friends. This is Astrology AF, the show that talks everything astrology, above and below the totally real, not at all illusory sky. I'm Sunny, your hostess with over 30 years of chart reading experience.
And I'm Boots, your hostling with almost 30 years experience questioning innocent people to tears. We're here to walk with you through the twinkling starlight into the basic, the advanced, and the obscure.
Hello, and welcome to Astrology AF. I'm Boots.
And I'm Sunny.
And today we are going to be discussing the topic of the solar return, which is not just your birthday.
No, it's so much more than your birthday. I mean, since our calendar is set up to operate on the movements of the sun, it is your birthday, or maybe a day off. My birthday is mine is always one day early, my solar return. But the solar return technically is about the moment that the sun returns back around to where it was at the moment you were born. So, we do these charts with all these numbers, and so if somebody has their sun at, and I'm making this up, 22 degrees and 54 minutes, then of that sign, whichever sign, then when the sun comes back around to that spot, we have a solar return. Now, just like we have a Saturn return before, and we talked about the significance of a Saturn return, what do you imagine the significance of a solar return is?
I mean, outside of like what I've looked into a little bit and read myself, which is not a whole lot, I literally have never heard the term outside of getting into astrology. At this point, I've come to understand that when the sun hits the exact degree and minute of its place in your natal chart, it is not necessarily going to be in the same house as it was in your natal chart. And also, all of the other planets will have moved around. And so it is a completely different chart from your own natal chart. Like Mercury's in a different spot, and like in this one I can see Venus is up right next to where the sun is for this one that we're looking at for mine. Everything is completely moved around, completely different places.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily interpret it the way that we do a Saturn return. The sun comes back around like clockwork every year, and so what astrologers have been up to since about the 8th century is figuring out what this is useful for. And what they have found is that it is a good predictive chart for the upcoming 12 months. So if we want to know what, if it's my birthday, I want to know what's going to happen for me this next year. What am I going to be up to? We take a look at the solar return chart, and we do it as a standalone chart. I think you mentioned having a Taurus ascendant. Since you don't normally have a Taurus ascendant, and I should just go ahead and, with Boots's permission, share the screen. There we go. And so this is Boots's solar return. So this is the solar return from 2022. You can see right here. from the last time that the sun hit 11 degrees and 49 minutes, which is your natal sun.
Right. Of Libra specifically.
Yes, thank you. In the the science, the learning of solar returns, the ancient astrologers, especially the ancient astrologer, I just love his name, Abu Mashar, says that the 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 chart should be cast for the birth location. For somebody like me who has traveled far and wide, this is an issue. You don't cast the chart for where you're living now. You cast your chart for the birth location. So in this case, we are looking at Denver, Colorado, and the time does not matter. I mean, it
Okay.
not doesn't matter, but we are mostly looking at the if the sun is in the right degree and minute and sign. So once we've established that the sun is in the right degree, minute, and sign, then we can start looking at this chart and go, what am I expecting for this year? This happens to be, Boots is in this year right now. We were kind of far away from starting a new solar return chart, the future year that starts, 2 months from now.
Like a
Anyway,
month and a half.
yeah, but this would be talking about, what's been going on since your last birthday. And so, yeah, so we're talking about a Taurus rising chart. Okay. This does not mean that Boots like becomes a Taurus rising person. It means that there's kind of a flavor. Sometimes it's like this last year I just felt like doing a lot of rest, just relaxing and just being chill. This would be one of the things that we might see with a Taurus rising solar return. This year is going to feel a little more, just a little more calm, a little more less intense and restless, annoyed, you know, but just feeling like, okay, this is okay. This is all right. Now we do have,
Yeah.
counteracting that, the planet Uranus in the first house. And so so this is kind of a little bit opposite of just most of the things that I just said. You know? There's an energy about, oh, yay, rest, relax. And then there's an energy about change everything.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely been accurate, I would say, over this last year. There's been a lot of rest, but with an undertone of like I'm resting while trying to change things. And some things have, yeah, mostly for the better, fortunately, but some things have been just like really quickly changed, very sudden realizations and decision making.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds very much like this chart. So we're also looking at the nodes, the north and south node, also in the first and seventh houses. The nodes are about direction that the universe is inviting us to go. That's what the north node is. South node is, I always talk about the south node in terms of like a big bowl of ice cream. It's something that it's like, oh yay, I know how to do this. I love ice cream. I This is so great. And then we finish the bowl of ice cream and it's like, oh, why? Why did I do that?
Mhm.
That was maybe not my smartest decision. It's kind of, some astrologers will call it karma. I don't like that term because it's borrowing someone else's cultural term. But
Okay, yeah.
it's kind of like this stuff isn't good for you. This stuff isn't, this isn't the direction we're inviting you to go. It's something you know how to do. It's easy, but it's not good for you.
Okay.
That,
Yeah.
that's the South Node. And then when we take a look at the signs that these are in, we're talking about Taurus and we're talking about Scorpio. Okay. Have a lot of fixed energy here. There's a piece that is inviting you to move. And specifically in terms of you and relationships. And when we find the South Node in relationships, it's oftentimes because we're giving everything, giving all of our power, trying to get approval, trying to, just love me, whatever, I don't care. I'll do whatever you need me to do in order to make you happy, you know?
And
And
just to backtrack just a tiny bit and to explain for anybody who's unfamiliar with what a node is,
mhm,
so the moon does not orbit the Earth on the same plane that the Earth orbits the sun. The moon's a little bit diagonal from that, and so there's a point at which the moon comes up above the Earth's solar orbit, and then a point at which the moon goes down below the Earth's solar orbit. The north node is where it comes above, and the south node is where it dips back down underneath, just for a literal explanation of what a node is.
marvelous. What I do know is that when the sun and moon are near these spots, it's because they've lined up, and that's where we get eclipses, which are
Yeah.
different. Yeah, different than normal new or full moon, but the location of the nodes shows where the eclipses are going to be. Woohoo! Because competing astrology facts. I'm I'm not competing, but
Corresponding, maybe? There's a lot of
um,
information to, like, the longer I spend doing this and talking to you, the more I find out about just like there's so much of a pattern. All of this is a pattern that repeats, over millennia. But then there's the smaller patterns that we can see repeat over and over and over again just in a human lifetime. And that's one of those, you see if you look at a chart at the time of an eclipse, you'll see the sun and the moon lining up with the nodes, and then how like a full moon can be seen in the sun and the moon being directly opposite each other, right,
full moon is
in
an
a
opera.
chart.
Yes,
And
yes.
then a new moon is when they are conjunct right next to each other in a chart. So if you're looking at a chart for the day, on the day of a full moon, you'll see that they're directly opposite each other like that. And those patterns just repeat, and you can learn to see, what in a chart signifies and shows you what's going to be going on visibly in the sky. Sometimes we can visibly see, an eclipse or whatnot, but you can see the new moon or the full moon every single month as long as the skies are clear.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. Good job.
Thank you.
Seriously, yeah. Let's talk about this chart some more. The
Hmm.
ruler of Taurus, which is Venus, is over here hanging out in the sixth house in Libra. A couple of things. One is, yay, Venus in its own sign that it rules. Okay.
Mhm.
This is lovely. This is dignity. We're happy for that. However, we're talking about the house of the sixth house, the cadent house of the sixth, a little less powerful than than we might want the ruler of the rising sign to be. A lot of traditions, the sixth house is in aversion. They look at it as the aspects, and let me just start drawing here more or less. The aspects that we work with are sextile, okay, so it's 2 signs apart, square, trine, and opposition. And so what
Okay, so a sextile is 2 signs apart, square is 3 signs apart, and opposition is 6 signs apart. There's 1, 2, 3.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
yeah, and
Okay. Okay.
trine is 4 signs apart.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So what we have there, if you were paying attention at home, is we have the second house, the sixth house, the eighth house, and the 12th house are in what we call aversion, because no planet in those signs, in those houses, can see the first house.
Hmm. Okay. They don't make any of those either trine or square or sextile or opposition to the first house. None of those angles are being presented if a planet is in either 6, 8, or 12, right?
6 and or 2.
Or 2. Okay, 2 as well. That's right.
Yes, new word, Ptolemaic. It's
Ptolemaic
Ptolemaic.
with a
It's
P.
with the P, and those are the names for those aspects. Okay.
Okay.
Some modern astrologers have come up with other aspects. Good for them. I don't use them. You know.
Okay. Nothing wrong with them. You can I've heard people say that you can get a lot of information out of looking at them, but they're just not classical or Hellenistic or medieval aspects. And arguably, you can get everything out of the Ptolemaic aspects that you can get out of the non-Ptolemaic aspects anyways.
So back to my point about, I was talking about Venus, and then I went off into diversion land. But what happens here? We have Venus, lovely domicile, dignity, and no relationship to Taurus in the first.
Hmm.
So what that says to me, because Venus is the planet that rules both you this year, you know, kind of your personality, or who you're showing up as.
Okay, because of the fact that it rules the first house,
Yes, exactly.
which is Taurus. Okay.
And then it also rules the sixth house. And so you go, well, what are the sixth house? What kind of things are in the sixth house? It's health, it's small animals, pets, you know, and when we say small animals, we're not talking like an ox or a horse, you know, but something smaller than that. But usually pets. We're talking about, in ancient times, astrologers delineated the sixth house to talk about slaves. A little uncomfortable. We don't have slaves, but what we do have are those routine tasks that in another time in life we might have said that this person can do that for me, you know, filing,
Right.
the trash out, you know, just that routine stuff that, man, if I could give this job away, I would, you know.
Right. Just to be extremely clear, absolutely not endorsing slavery or saying that astrology is pro-slavery. It is just an uncomfortable fact of human existence that people got this idea that they could own each other. And it was common enough that it got worked into something that applies to everyday life, like a natal chart and like astrology. And so now instead of that, it's kind of been translated into like employees or subordinates, hasn't it?
It has, yes, yes. People that you supervise. The wording.
Yeah, having Venus there. I definitely didn't get any beautiful employees this year.
I wonder if it's around people you work with.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I work with you. You are very beautiful.
well, and it's not. Thank you, and not so much about beauty. It can be beauty, but it's like calming, like the oils that they would pour on you, and and soothe you and calm you. It's that kind of of energy. In addition, the sun is there. It can feel like a little bit like it's shining a light, a spotlight, or one of those, big flashlights. The things that are either feel satisfactory or don't feel satisfactory are very much in the spotlight.
And I could see how that has been this year have been to be working at something that I do care about and that I do think is beautiful and pleasant and satisfying to me, to my soul. And those things can be kind of hard to find. Just having work, jobs, and everything, most people don't super care for jobs, things that you just do because you have to be getting a paycheck. Having that all happening in the sixth house together has been that there has been a big spotlight on my day to day and in the things that I'm doing just to bring in a paycheck and how I want it to be something beautiful and I want it to be something good.
That sounds very much like what we had here, what we talked about here.
Yeah,
Um,
and then I'm noticing how that's then in opposition directly across from like Chiron in my 12th house
yeah,
there in Aries. And I'm not so sure exactly how to interpret that. I know Chiron is about um the asteroid Chiron is about um wounds, like psychological and physical, and being there in the 12th house of like secret enemies and mental illness and self undoing and the imprisonment, either literal or um like being imprisoned in your own mind. Fortunately, I have not gone to prison this year so far. Batting 1,000 on that. And I have not dealt too much with like um mental health issues. I would actually say that this year my mental health has improved for the most part. And looking back, and I haven't kept up on it super well, but for about a month and a half, something like that, I was in the habit of meditating just for like 5 and then 10 and then maybe 15 minutes just about every day. And in doing that, I saw my general anxiety levels reduce significantly. And so, in relation to sixth house being routine, and then Chiron over in the 12th house of that, self undoing. Are you saying that you're pointing at how Jupiter is also there in the 12th house in Aries? Do you think that that played a role?
I absolutely think that that played a role. If you look, that is a closer. Well, it's a very close aspect with Venus. Having both benefics engaged in an aspect is pretty potent. That's, they're bouncing good juju back and forth with each other. So yes,
Okay.
absolutely, I would say that's,
Hmm.
I'm not wanting to dump on any of any theory that you have as far as, but I would say Jupiter in the 12th would definitely be an expression, especially opposite Venus, is
Hmm.
definitely an expression of, yeah, it just feels big, you know?
Yeah. And Jupiter even being in its own, that's in the smaller portion, that first
Mhm.
fifth of Aries, Jupiter is in its own, that's the face, right?
I think so. It's either face or terms. I can't remember which
Okay.
one I have set up here.
Yeah, so that has worked out pretty well. I'd say all of that has gone pretty nicely for me this year.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, and that seems very, very indicative. How about our fifth house there? We've got Mercury there in Virgo in its own sign or one of its two signs. Creativity.
Yeah, I've gotten into doing some jewelry making and wire wrap this year. I started off by trying to get into cross stitching and seeing if that was for me. That was not for me, even though it was in Virgo, which can be very, it's the small details and what I would often consider the tedium of things. Cross stitch ended up being too small of details and being too lengthy for me. Mad respect to anybody who does that and enjoys it, because I really enjoy looking at cross stitch. That's why I wanted to get into it in the first place. But jewelry making and wire wrapping ended up being a lot more what I have come to enjoy and spend some more of my time doing for creativity. So this is the first time I've looked at this solar return chart at all. I was barely even starting to get into astrology at the time that all of this took place. And this year I still was like found myself itching for some sort of creative outlet outside of just the music that I also do, something that more tangible and that I could, have to look at after I was done with it. So it's funny that that ended up being
You know what's even better?
what?
Mercury rules. It's flexible metal, right? It's white.
Ah, oh, that's funny.
I mean, you could almost look at this chart and go, "Oh no, you don't. You need metal. You need wire wrapping."
Uh, and then it being in the uh term or face there of Mars, in that portion of Mercury, so it's in the spot that's particularly sensitive to or represented by Mars. And then if you look over at Mars, Mars is in Mercury's ruled house in the Mars term, and it is in the second house, which is like wealth and money. And I'm wire wrapping stones, which used to be more so, it still kind of is, the valuable, the tangible wealth, the stuff you can stick in your pocket or your little purse and carry around with you. Um, and so that kind of ties together as well.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I think you mentioned Gemini. Mercury is in
Yeah.
Mars is in Gemini. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like all these correspondences. Very, very terrific.
So moving right along, we haven't yet touched on the ninth house. We've got Pluto in Capricorn up
Mhm.
there. That being Pluto being, you have described it in the past as being volcanic eruptions, big, sudden changes, which usually at first are disasters, but then end up, volcanic soil is some of the most fertile that we have for growing the things that we love in life. And I started off this year by getting into an IT program at my local community college, trying to work towards a certificate. Ended up deciding that I didn't like paying for stuff that I could learn on the internet and am no longer pursuing that directly.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. Pluto there would be it's Pluto is delving in, is depth. It does not say that it has to be delving in a classroom with an
Right.
instructor, you know.
Yeah.
It's actually, inviting you to participate in that in some way. I mean, I don't know whether Pluto has an opinion on higher education and, you know, loan
Yeah.
payments, but
And and we bring in higher education into the conversation because the ninth house represents higher education and pursuit of greater knowledge that we go after either in school or just pursuing it ourselves for our own enrichment on, yeah, on our own time.
yeah, right. No, I was making a joke about loan payments as opposed to living. Does Pluto require that you take a classically, certified training, or is Pluto more interested in let's just delve in and learn?
Okay. And astrology is a ninth house topic, is it not?
Absolutely.
And that has definitely been what I've been diving the deepest into over this last year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And then in the 10th house, we've got the moon and Saturn both there in Aquarius. Saturn rules Aquarius. The 10th house is tends to be career, honors, fame, what you're known for, those sorts of things. Saturn is kind of restriction, tends to be, but also foundations. And like we talked about in last week's episode, is walls and both boundaries and those boundaries and those foundations. How would you, in looking at that 10th house, what would you say about that?
Saturn is it's very context dependent, right? If we are doing hard work and, putting in the effort that we need to put in, Saturn comes along and says, "Here you go. Here's some help." If we are screwing around and we're watching TV and, not doing anything, Saturn comes around and says, "What are you doing?" Okay. So, you know, so it's very context dependent. This 10th house with the moon here, I want to address the moon first because your comment about sixth house, you talked about how you've been spending all this year trying to you want to do something that is meaningful, is beautiful, is or at least in some way is beautiful. It doesn't have to. That's moon in the 10th as well. Moon in the
Mhm.
10th is very much about this has to what I'm spending my my precious time away from the things and people that I love. That has to mean something. And if it
Mm.
doesn't mean anything, then what the hell's the point? You know?
Absolutely.
So moon is very, very set up like this. It's, you know, it's about it's looking for things that mean something, things that are just feel like they're grounded in you, in what matters to you, in so that I mean, and that can be anything. It can be, you know, somebody can be like, I to me, you know, drawing anime characters, that is the thing that lights me up. And that's what if they have moon in the 10th, that's what they'll be drawn to. Even though a bunch of the, you know, some of the world won't even care about their drawings, right? Because it's, you know, very specific. Makes sense? It's what lights you up. Okay.
Mhm.
So, and then conjunct, not quite out of orb really, but co-present with Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn in Aquarius, this is the third planet in domicile or in this chart, which, you know, which says to me oftentimes planets who are able to manifest. Okay. Saturn in Aquarius is talking about how do we get this done? How can we do this in a way that helps you, helps other people? Because Aquarius is about especially large groups of people. And
Mhm.
and is done with a you know, with a foundation, you know, or you know, within these restrictions.
Okay. Yeah. And I also have heard a lot about Aquarius being kind of a um the unwitting leader, in that Aquarius kind of does its own thing, and doesn't so much care about the fact that it's more on the outskirts or out on the fringe of society. And it's at the same time very related to society in the fact that it knows it's not deeply participating right there in the middle. And that's something that I've thought about a lot with getting so involved in astrology this year and in starting the podcast and stuff, is that I'm kind of choosing a path. And it's a path that for a lot of society is not highly popular. There's a lot of um, poo-pooing of astrology, and people, um our society in general is not very about it. It's looked at as very superstitious, and I'm aware of that, and it's been something that I've definitely considered, in that, you know, I'm attaching my face, and well, I use a stage name, but you know, I'm attaching my reputation, another 10th house topic, to astrology. Um, but it's because of what it means to me, that moon there in the 10th house, and also that I have seen it have a positive effect on the people around me when I'm able to do just telling a friend about a transit that they have coming up. And it was like they've got Mars in Cancer, and Mars was transiting Cancer earlier this year. And so I did some digging into that and what that might look like, and told him about that. Just thinking, just like doing it for fun, you know. And he came back to me and told me how meaningful it was to him, and how it made him feel like he really did have a place in this world, and that you know, he's accounted for, and that he's not an aberration just here without purpose, that he's actually that the universe itself is thinking about him and is about him. And that was a moment for me. It was kind of an aha moment where I was like, this really can benefit people and make people feel like they do have a place and that they are seen, and that they do matter. And I was like, okay, that kind of settles it. This is for me. This is what I really want to do.
Marvelous. Oh my God. Yeah, yeah. I'm going to stop sharing. Sound like that chart mattered or worked for you?
Yeah, yeah. The one thing we didn't get into was that 11th house there with Neptune in Pisces. And I did want to ask a little bit about that because Neptune, as in the nature of Neptune, is kind of can be difficult to describe, but you have a much better time with it, it seems like. Um, how would you talk about that Neptune in Pisces happening in an 11th house place?
So with Neptune especially, I talk about high vibe, low vibe. All the planets have a high vibe, low vibe, but it feels like there's so much confusion around Neptune, and there's a reason for that. But high vibe Neptune is those fantasies, those idealistic kinds of things where it's like, I know, let's rent a boat and sail to the Caribbean. And there's a do you know how to sail? No, but that's okay. It's just that, it's just that it's almost not tethered to reality, but
Mm,
but in a way it is because it could be, and so it's all of those aspirational states. Okay.
okay.
Low vibe. Low vibe Neptune is confusion, and confusion can be deliberate confusion. Confusion can be deception. It's like if you take an object and you set it in a few inches of water, which Neptune is the god of the ocean, right? So
Right.
if you set that object in and then you try to reach in and grab that, very often you are not going to be able to grab the object on the first try. It's you
Mm,
know it's like refraction. It's like things that I'm pretty sure it's like this, and then, oh no, it's not like that at all. you know
mm,
or
okay.
it's I'm pretty sure it's like this, and oh, it's all of that except for a little bit. So Neptune is kind of where we either fantasize, have these fantasies, or where we have this confusion, to boil it down.
Okay.
11th house is groups and associations. It is extended family shows up in the 11th house.
Mm,
um like my aunt's grandmother, kind of, I mean, that kind of thing. So in terms of groups and associations that you're hanging out with, are you noticing either or both of those high low states of Neptune?
I would say that I've seen, for the most part, like my groups and associations have been pretty good. It's been pretty high vibe. A lot of this year has been, my group has been largely the people that I do work with at Shining Lotus, getting to develop a really cool sort of tribe there and make I've made some new friends there, and it doesn't thus far seem like there's been a whole lot of low vibe. Like everything has been pretty straightforward and has been pretty dreamy. But I don't know if it almost seems like Neptune's just been kind of chilling up there and hasn't been very turbulent for me this year, which I'm certainly grateful for.
It's not something that I tend to see having a huge the outers are not something that I tend to see having a huge prominence in solar returns. I tend to, give more focus to the inner planets. Not inner, not totally inner, but Saturn on in, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So and that might be because of ancient when these techniques were developed, they weren't they didn't have Neptune and Uranus and so
okay. Well, yeah, that pretty much covers my entire solar return chart. Hopefully, this has been something that hasn't been too solely focused on me, and everybody listening has been able to learn a little bit or has found the conversation interesting. I know that for me, a lot of my learning in astrology has just been by listening to people talk about it and picking things up from there. So I hope that there has been some good content there for all of our lovely listeners to pick up on and kind of add to their own repertoire of knowledge and understanding.
yeah. Yeah, I mean listening to people delineate charts is the first step to delineating charts yourself. And I know you're beyond that, but if people are interested in doing this, hang out, listen.
Yeah, if you want to have your solar return chart done, there actually happens to be somebody whom I know who I would very highly recommend for getting a solar return chart consultation. Um, because as we all know, Sunny does lovely astrological readings and consultations and would be more than happy to take some time and go over yours with you.
Thanks so much for being here with us today. To keep getting more astrology with Sunny and Boots, like and subscribe.
To talk with Sunny in an astrological consultation, visit sunnysastrology.com to schedule an appointment. To reach Sunny and Boots about the show, email us at contact@astrologyafpodcast.com. Links in the description.